Hello all, very warm welcome from all of us again, all the way from India, and very good evening, good morning, good afternoon for all of you who are joining us from across the globe. Once again, we are so pleased to be with CyberX on the same platform, on the CISO platform for the season, and which we all need definitely. This is the need of the hour. And today we are with you all the way from India, all the eminent speakers, the panelists, the leaders working out of India and for India, I have to say. And today we will be talking about or discussing in detail about leaders in cybersecurity on securing digital India. Yes, this is really important because we having the second largest population which are connected on the digital network or who are digitally connected in the world. It's really important for us, and all of us definitely know cybersecurity is definitely the backbone for the digitization. And without taking much delay, I would quickly like to introduce all of my eminent panelists. And this is also kind of a privilege and honor for me to have all of them with us today. And firstly, I would like to quickly go to the panel about each and every one of us here, and I would like to quickly introduce Shivangi. Shivangi is the co-founder and CEO of Araka. She's having more than 2 decades of experience in domains of information, risk, data privacy, e-commerce, and networks. And she has handled multiple roles over the years at SIFI, Wipro, before she has become the co-founder of Araka. And Araka empowers organizations to implement and manage their InfoSec and data privacy programs via its Araka Intelligent platform. And not only just that, she's not just an entrepreneur, but she's also an author. She authored her first book on data privacy in India for DSCI, an ASCOM body, for the DCCP, which is DSCI's Certified Privacy Professional Program. She's also a faculty on their Advanced Privacy Program, and she was coming back to her academics. She has done her post-graduation management from the Indian Institute of Management, IIM Calcutta, which is normally we say the best cream of the Indian society is normally they just go and study there, the best brains of a country. And she also holds several of her certifications starting from CISA, from ISACA, CIPT from IAPP, and DCPP from DSCI. And I would like to quickly go to Ask. And today, as I said, this is one of the eminent panelists. He holds a PhD in cybersecurity, and his specialization is on OT cybersecurity, along with a master degree in cyber law and engineering in computer science. Even he has more than 2 decades of experience, and he is currently handling a position of CISO at IOCL. And lastly, but not the least, I'm also privileged to introduce my mentor and my coach, Mr. Satish Kumar Dwibhashi. He is having over 2 decades of experience in IT and information security. And currently he is working as a Chief Information Security Officer at Wibmo, based out of Bangalore. And he holds so many certifications, like he's certified in CISA, CISM, CRISC, CGIT, and ISO 27001. And he has been actively volunteering for more than a decade. And he is currently the president at ISACA Bangalore chapter. And he is a regular speaker, mentor, and kind of a coach, and kind of a support for many people from different forums. And he also provides his thought leadership and guidance for many people who are also pursuing their careers in cybersecurity. And with this, I would like to quickly put the spot on Yask to also start this conversation. Yeah, back to you, Yask.
Right, Chanja, thank you, and good morning, good day to all the people across the globe. Firstly, a small disclaimer, I am participating here in my personal capacity, and therefore my views are personal, and my company might not necessarily subscribe to these. Right, so the topic that we would be discussing is digitalization, and yes, since we are from the cybersecurity domain, all of us, we have a common concern. Digitalization undoubtedly holds a tremendous potential. Although a lot of companies have started their journey towards digitalization, but still there's a huge potential. In fact, there have been certain reports which say that companies can add, or countries in fact can add a couple of percentage points to their GDP just because of this. However, I think the only bump in this journey is the concerns of cybersecurity. If countries or organizations, the people can have the confidence in the technology that is being deployed, I think the pace at which the digitalization is currently going, it would increase at a far, it will go at a much faster pace. A couple of things, when we talk about digitalization, in fact, I think one of the, we always talk about bringing in all sorts of devices, customers, there are multiple devices now, right from the mobile to the handheld devices to the laptops and so on and so forth. There has to be a seamless experience for the customer. But I think we often, during this conversation, we tend to miss out on one part, which is very important, which is the processes part of the organization. When we talk about the journey of digitalization, and one very important aspect is the processes part within the organization. How easily or how difficult it is to transform one process within an organization. That is what is going to be the key in the digitalization or digital transformation of an organization. I think equal focus needs to be paid within the organization, not just towards the customer end. I mean, I'm saying that you necessarily need to provide them a seamless experience across all the domains, across all the platforms. But what is important is to understand how important is the process part. Just to give you some examples, there have been industries which you traditionally, historically wanted to be known as manufacturing firms. Now they are also wanting to project themselves as digitally transformed companies, and specifically mentioning the processes that they have adopted to transform their outlook. So my simple point being, when we talk about digitalization, we just should not look at the endpoint, the customer end. We also need to look at the internal part, the processes. And that is, I come from a manufacturing industry, and therefore I think a lot of focus has to be put on the processes as well. These are my initial thoughts on this subject.
Thank you, S, for sharing your thoughts on this. And I would like to go to Shivangi on this, and maybe you can also talk about your experience and your insights on the digitization and the way how it is moving forward with respect to cybersecurity.
Thanks, Shalja, and a pleasure being here. I think Yask has brought out some very critical aspects, especially the process part, and I couldn't agree more because. When I look at digitalization in the country and the brisk pace at which this is going forward, honestly, I get a little more, I would say more than a little anxious, because I think we completely sort of underestimate the effort required in managing the risks that are emanating out of it. Right. So if you see a lot of the stuff that gets discussed in seminars like these is, and a vast amount of conferences also focuses on, I feel, one aspect or one segment of the population, of the corporate population, which is largely the large organizations. Whereas I feel the long tail, the entire set of small and mid-sized companies really struggle. They don't have access to expertise, they don't have access to budgets, know-how. Typically, they're given a certain set of, somebody comes and sells them one or two products, makes it appear like it's the silver bullet, and then they go ahead with it, and then are taken aback when there are problems, right? And somewhere I feel in the ecosystem that tends to get neglected, because everybody is focusing on the larger organizations. And not to say, because larger organizations have huge complexities which need to be sort of addressed, but somewhere I feel the skew is that. So that's one thing that bothers me, that I wanted to sort of bring out. The other aspect, continuing on that thread, is that you do have this vast digitization is giving rise to a profile of users, even in the corporate sector. I'm not talking about individuals or consumers. Organizations who typically, for them, the primary mechanism or primary device is the mobile phone. It is not the laptop or the PC. Okay. And the primary assets are all in the cloud. right? So when you have such an environment, the way risks are managed for this profile of audience is a little different from the way traditional management of risks happen. And somewhere that focus needs to be there because they're an equal component. The other observation I have over the years is that the way regulated sectors behave, like, BFSI, telecom, healthcare, wherever there is regulation, they tend to obviously be a lot more responsible, a lot more stuff is in place. But non-regulated sector, especially if they're not amongst the top layer of organizations, tend to treat this very differently. So the challenge for all of us, or rather I would say as a country, is to see how do we bring everybody up on the same plane, because finally it's one integrated ecosystem. So while the large organizations can go, have huge budgets, have the best of skills to kind of protect their entire environment, there is the huge outlier, circling layer around them of third party risks, and everybody I know is struggling with third party risks, right? And the third parties are finally small and mid-sized organizations that cater and feed into this. And then they have their users, so even not even going into the end user sort of environment. So I feel all of this sort of needs to come together, and we need to therefore figure out a way that in this grand scheme of everybody being a part of a tightly integrated whole, and not just at the national level but at a global level, how do we solve for it so that everybody's on the same plane, right?
Thank you, Shivangi, for this wonderful, insights on everyone is integrated. So we have to treat everyone equally, irrespective of regulated industry or a non-regulated industry. In the end, everything is so tightly coupled in a way. Thanks for that. And with this, I would like to put the spot on Satish Kumar. So maybe you can also share your insights on this.
Sure. Thanks, Sailaja, first of all, and the CyberX team for having me here. It's good to see my friends and, of course, Shivangi and Yask. They already shared a lot of good insights. So I just want to add, of course, I work in the fintech space predominantly. Of course, I can say more of where there's a lot of innovation happening. So, in fact, as Shivangi said rightly, in fact, yeah, in fact, the business priorities are always driven by, uh, I can say, like, see, most of the young startups and all, right, the focus initially is on the product, on the innovation to really get those products out. But yeah, as the industry is moving now, we're just going back to the actual topic of digitalization. Like, so digital disruption is inevitable, right? I'm sure every enterprise today is going through the digital transformation journey. And I normally talk in various forums saying that, see, today the business, so traditionally earlier IT was looked as more like a support function, but today IT is an enabler, right? Today the boards and the CEOs are looking up to the CIO and the CISO to solve certain business problems, and the CIO and the CISOs are working together to ensure that the business really scales. So it's more. I think there's a huge shift now, and while the one side, the lot of investments happening on the IT space, it's not small, right? A lot of transformation happening, whether it's small, medium, large. Every enterprise would like to embrace those IT technologies, right? Especially with the growing data, there's a lot of buzz on AI, ML, RPA, whatnot. So one side, huge investments happening on this space, but the other side, as Yask said, the risks. Of course, my friend Shivangi also spoken about risk, like how. So many time, in fact, because of changing landscape, we in fact. I should say security always has been an afterthought. It's never taken proactively. Uh, of course, I should not talk loudly, but with the growing data breaches, right? That's where the organization wake up. So sometimes I say the breaches are good because it makes organizations wake up. It's a wake up call that, yeah, especially when a peer organization is breached. Suddenly we saw a lot of IT enabled organizations getting impacted on ransomware attacks, or even we saw suddenly there's a huge spike on the pharma companies, right? We saw suddenly there's a huge spike. So I think these are all good lessons where the other peer industries wake up. They take cybersecurity seriously. I call it as it's no more a IT problem; it's a business problem. Right? At the end of the day, whether you exist or do not exist, and it really hits the top line or bottom line, and finally, business is concerned about. One side they're making investments, but the other is to how do they protect those investments, and of course, there's a lot of reputation damage. So it's very exciting times. I'm a strong believer. I don't want to talk pessimistic about, but yeah. So for every problem, there is a solution. I completely agree with Shivangi. Of course, many times organizations take this point approach. You just try to. It's I call it as a patchwork, right? You just try to buy some point solution, try to solve a problem, but then I think they don't look at holistically. I think the holistic approach is missing. So, but yeah, as she said rightly, the regulated industries are much more prepared because of the regulations. Of course, the regulators push so hard, especially banking. The central bank is very serious on third-party risk and whatnot, and the healthcare is also, I think, serious. But then there are a lot of other industries which are not taking this seriously until they're not targeted or until there's no breach. They just take it very lightly. But yeah, but I think there's a lot of awareness among the whole industry. Even the board is today concerned that at least they are at least asking right the right questions, that are we prepared for the next breach? I think I use this word because I don't want to use the word are we secure, because I think security is a myth for me. It's a myth because it's better like are we prepared for the next breach, or are we at least I think the whole focus is about resiliency today. Resiliency is the key, and that's my point of view. And every organization of course has to and there's so many I should say moving parts right around, and it's so fluid. It's not that there's no one size fits all solution what you can buy and you are safe and secure, while of course the vendors push a lot of solutions, but then it's a tough call. It's a risk based approach. What are my risks, and what is the context of the organization, so that I put the right solution or the right process, as Yask said, focus on. And the other part is people are the weakest link, as we all know. And of course many organizations spend time, efforts in training, education, but yeah, that's a long way to go. And suddenly thanks to COVID, the whole landscape has changed, right? We have invested heavily on the enterprise perimeter, and we are all sitting at home. Of course the whole risk landscape has changed now. I'm sure we all, right, in the last 6 months, I think we heard so much of zero trust and whatnot, right? Because the whole focus has shifted now towards the endpoints and, of course, so I think it's a constant, I should say, struggle, or constantly keep looking at how to improve the overall posture. So it's very interesting. I should say interesting times and a long way to go. And yeah, we're all part of the same ecosystem, helping the whole enterprise or the whole ecosystem.
Thank you, Satish, for rightly pointing out, and you also mentioned digital, disruption is inevitable, and for sure we all have to agree security is a myth. We can only say how resilient you are is the new norm after the COVID. All of us have to completely and totally agree to that fact. And thank you all for adding your wonderful insights. And now let's just get into the discussion a little bit deeper. And yes, maybe to you, how do you think like this? Threat landscape is changing, especially in our subcontinent. Maybe you can just throw some light on the changing threat landscape in our subcontinent.
I think, in an environment like ours, having a moving goalpost, the trend landscape is not just changing, it is evolving at such a rapid pace. In fact, we are dealing with different threats, probably emanating from the same, but in different ways, things that are like, and I think one of the reasons is that we are expanding also at a high pace. The more, the bigger the obviously more are the chances of getting attacked or me getting exposed. And that is one part. I think if we started off dealing with the attacks which were very simplistic in nature. You go back 10, 15 years, there were simple attacks, the virus attacks, then came the ransomwares, hash algorithms were broken. the attacks have gone all the way up to the level of the nation states backed attacks. I think one key factor that we need to understand is that the cyber attacks are a function of, I think, at least three things: the skill, the time, and the money. Given infinite time, anything can be breached. I mean, that's for sure. However, what was happening? If you look at some of the attacks, there is a lack of probably money. Intent is always there from the cybersecurity or the opportunistic criminals. The intent is there. Probably they lack the kind of patience that agency or a nation state would have. Therefore, you would have the attacks like ransomware, which would target mass organizations, primarily for a financial gain. If you combine these two, you have the right time, you have sufficient time, you have sufficient money, and you have sufficient skill. All these three things combined together, which is the most sophisticated attack happening. The attacks are now not just meant for some financial gain; they are only for the purpose of sabotaging. So I think this is a very deadly combination. All these three. I would be more than happy to deal with criminals who are best at either two of these. They have money or the skill, they do not have time, that's okay. Or somebody who has the skill or the time, without the money. However, if you combine all these three things, it becomes very difficult for any organization to tackle these kind of attackers. Therefore, the landscape has now expanded to or the criminals are now ranging from the ones who are expert in just one of these three to the level wherein all the three are expert or the best in all these three. Therefore, for any organization, no matter how big or small it is, they have to deal with plethora of these kind of criminals. Not only has it expanded the level of attacks, what has also happened is that the sophistication has gone up. I mean, volume obviously has gone up, but more than the volume, it is the sophistication which is more problematic. I would more than happily defend thousands of attacks if the sophistication is less. But the moment you bring in some level of sophistication, even small number of attacks, we have seen that happening across the globe. One single attack on a nuclear establishment some 10 years back really destabilized the whole. To such an extent that nobody started actually looking at that domain. Nobody was looking at OT till about 10 years back, till such time that Stuxnet happened. So this is exactly what is happening every day. We are coming out with we are seeing new things. I think companies have realized that. Just one more point on this: security, I think, for us or for everyone is always reactive. I can at max have the tools which are reacting to a pre-existing attack or a modus of attack. Therefore, at best, I'll be one step behind the attackers. At best, with the kind of tools that I have. Therefore, what I need to do is maximize my scales, get onto the same level, maximize the efficacy of the tools that I have, and probably just be prepared for unprecedented situations.
You're on mute, Shailaja.
Yeah, thank you, Shivangi. So thank you, Yask, for that. So you rightly kind of summarized like these people who are on the other side of the table are having money, time, and skill. With a combination of that, they're trying to increase the complexity day by day, which is also becoming so challenging for the organizations around. And maybe with this, since we are talking at a generic way, maybe Satish, I would like to ask you, like, we have seen the growth of e-commerce because, as Shivangi also mentioned, mobile device has become it's kind of become part of our, a DNA. Like people also started telling mobile phone contains more than our DNA these days. After the COVID has come, everyone started using this. At the same time, there's a lot of growth of e-commerce in India. And can you also just throw some light on the growth of e-commerce and its challenges pertaining to vulnerabilities in this spectrum?
Yeah, so as Shivangi said, of course, today the whole, I should say, the ecosystem, right? The way we shop or the way we, especially with COVID, in fact, everything has moved online. In fact, people prefer, because we are just completely lost at home. I should say every service what we would like to take is through mobile or some sort of online. So definitely e-commerce, of course, while even before lockdown, e-commerce was at its best, and now I think it has given much more. In fact, if you look at the whole ecosystem, because I work in the payment ecosystem, because payments like or if you look at the Indian, the whole payment, there's so much of options out there, and no doubt. The whole e-commerce and the payment ecosystem is one of the best. In fact, I should say, using the best of the class technologies. And so one side, no doubt, it's all about the convenience for the user. So if you go and look at most of the e-commerce sites or applications which are built so rich, in fact, when I say rich, because the customer experience is the key now, right? Like it's the same old traditional what we used to talk. You go to any mall, we don't mind spending hours in shopping, but at the billing counter we are restless, right? When I say restless, we just want to quickly get out of that the queue. So the same thing applies in e-commerce. Because I come from payment space, I'll talk about while every company would like to give a seamless experience of that. You can see, right, whether it's fashion or it's buying any kind of goods. Today we just hop to the online, but but finally, end of the day, the payment experience is also very key. I'm sure, because I can talk about that. While there are two-factor authentication and all RBI mandates, but still every card union is trying to see how they can make the payment experience much seamless, especially with a one-click payment or sort of risk-based authentication where the risk is already known. I think today with so much of data out there, now all these e-commerce companies are sitting on a huge pile of data, and today looking at that data, how they can make the, so one side is payment, the e-commerce shopping experience, but the other side is the also the checkout experience. In fact, how quickly a customer can really check out and have that same experience. You can see most of the leading e-commerce websites, in fact, keep on innovating that day in day out, how they can make the overall experience. So that is one side. But the other side, of course, the risks, that is enormous, because see, the business itself is online, right? So they have to be out there. It's like you, it's open for all, equally the fraudsters, naturally. So constantly they're targeted. But having said that, they also equally invest heavily to see that they have the right, in fact, the systems and portals are available for the right legitimate user. And I think they have a tough challenge to keep these bad guys away from the system. But it's all part of the same ecosystem. But that's the reason why e-commerce companies, in fact, spend a lot in the whole cyber security space, whether it's including, I think the lot of focus is on the monitoring piece. In fact, they constantly monitor what's happening. And thanks to the technology today, right? We have, uh, again, thanks to cloud, the whole cloud ecosystem provides you n number of tools and services where we can subscribe to get a visibility. I think I just want to talk about the dwell time. I think every enterprise industry is focusing on how can they reduce the dwell time. The dwell time is basically in cybersecurity is how much time do you take to detect like someone is there in your like I think you understand the dwell time is the key. Average dwell time I think is 100 days to 300 days. So still there are organizations who struggle to find that as yes said the attacks are sophisticated, the advanced persistent threats, these guys who are highly sophisticated. In fact, the challenge is to detect them. And the sooner you detect, so for the e-commerce companies, the dwell time has to be very low because they have to quickly detect them, quickly throw them out of the system so that the bad guys has the right means of course they are thrown and the real users really are having the right shopping experience. So one side e-commerce is great, but the other side the risks are too many for them because the business itself is on the internet. But thanks to the technologies and they definitely they are always ahead of the means compared to other industries because of the growing threats and the business itself has to really sustain the way they are positioned. So they spend so the whole point is about how do they ensure that one side they provide the same experience and second stay secure and provide a confidence to the user because he has to come back because the moment you feel that my experience or my the card data what I provide is not secure, probably I may not go back to the same shopping site. So I think that's the fine balance. They have to provide the seamless experience, equally give the assurance that they are secure, and give the same secure experience to the user.
Thank you, Satish, for helping us to understand from both the sides, coming from the payment gateway providers versus the people who are using those platforms. You're right. Sometimes we get restless at the be it a payment, physical billing counter or a virtual billing counter, and for sure we all know like there's this is the time where you also rightly mentioned everybody is like waking up. There are a lot of threats happening all around. One or the other company or industry is getting compromised. And Shivangi, I would like to also check with you on this, or want to like to pick your brain on this, since you are also working on this domain data privacy for quite some time. And this year, Modi ji also announced, our honorable prime minister also announced about the robust cybersecurity policy, which India is also going to come up with. And along with that, we are also working on PDPP 2019 is also on the way. With all of these in-house policies in place, is this going to set the security posture or of the organizations? Uh, I mean to say the organizations, it can be any sector, it can be banking, it can be pharma, it can be government, it can be industry, it can be academia. Do you think all of this will help us to give some security posture to all of these businesses around us?
Oh, definitely. I think it will be a big step forward, because I think we finally are looking at a law that is, first of all encompassing, right? It's going to cover government, it's going to cover basically all entities. Secondly, it's, I think, one of the game changers that the law will precipitate is going to be what is known as breach notification, right? Compulsory notification of breaches, which means that if you are breached, you have to inform the regulator, and there are penalties associated with that, which are pretty steep, right? Now, given that value chain that's expected to be triggered because of the bill, naturally it will make organizations push everybody who is maybe sitting on the fence or is a little reticent to finally make that jump and implement measures required, so that they are geared up, right? Because on one hand they face financial loss, and second, as Satish mentioned in his first opening statement, there's a huge reputation risk as well, right? So the combination will, I'm at least very optimistic, and Satish, I share your optimism, which is that that it will hopefully push the so-called laggards in the system to take measures which they may have been contemplating for so long, right? So I think that is going to be a major push. Of course, that has me, as a practitioner, worrying about the onerousness of that task in a country as large as ours, with so many people. I would still say that, it's a 80-20 rule. 20% folks know what is to be done and what has to be done, and the 80% have to sort of follow, right? And how do we, all of us as a community, we are still, all of us put together, still a drop in the ocean. How do we get together to bring that rest of the 80% up to speed, so that we overall as a country benefit? Because as Yask said, as Satish said, I think the threat landscape is only going to escalate, right? And then there are going to be direct threats. And as Yask was mentioning, it's not just about the criminals or the underworld. There is also nation states. And as an organization, I don't know under what combination of targets I come under. I may think I am just a small, little cog in this ecosystem, but something somewhere in some other geopolitical scenario may trigger me becoming the target, or me becoming the cog in some larger game, right? But ultimately, I suffer, and when I suffer, my customers suffer, my stakeholders suffer, right? So, how do we sort of therefore get everybody up to speed? And that's a concern. There are also, I would say, things which sometimes we like to say as when we're trying to explain to people the concept of privacy and how it's different from data security, is also what we call above the surface. So we're not talking criminals, we're not talking people who are out to get you, but we're talking about legitimate organizations. And taking a thread from the e-commerce discussion, points that you made, Satish, there are, we are today living in a world of apps, we are living in a world of websites. There are trackers, there's profiling, there's permissions being taken, and so much of data is being collected. So for example, in Arka, we do an annual study of Indian mobile apps and websites. We release the study every year in December, and some preliminary results for this year, which I'll be happy to also share here, is that even today 71% of Indian apps take access to the exact location, not even the course location, right? So precisely where you are now. If unless you're picking me up or doing a delivery of a particular product, why do you need my exact location? Why do 71% apps need exact location? But fine, it's not so much about them taking. Fine, there is, I may have a problem that they may take my exact location. Who all gets access to that? There are 22 third party trackers on an average in an Indian website today, which means that it is not just that particular organization, but there are 22 others who, for as a user, you have no idea. Now, each of these guys is sitting on this sensitive data with no malintention. There is marketing, advertising, targeting, all of that. But who knows what is their security and who is therefore, getting access to that data in a, legitimate way, in an illegitimate way. So the circles of vulnerability are just expanding, and there is actually no control. So while we can get caught up and hassled by the reality, I think somewhere another angle that we all need to also work on is, how do we therefore gear up the individual to say that you can't just say, the organization is completely responsible for my safety. How do I also, what do I need to do to protect myself? If I'm walking on the road, I can't just say that the driver and the car is completely responsible for what goes on, right? I also need to follow some rules and make sure I also remain safe. So how do we bring that into our culture, I think, is also a problem, that area that we need to sort of tackle. I mean, these are some thoughts that come to me, and I sort of ponder over it, not just now, but for a long time, actually.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, Shivangi. I also totally resonate to what you're talking about, and it's really important to have policies. And I would like to also pick Satish's thoughts on this. India coming up with this cybersecurity policy and PDPB bill, and do we think like do these two policies are good enough, or we need many more policies to ensure each and every organization will have an decent security posture?
So honestly, it's not only about policies, because there are great policies. In fact, I'm sure Shivangi will agree with me. Even before the PDP, right, we had IT Act, right? Of course, the Section 43, right, existed. It's not about that we never had policies. In fact, it's always we only talk about the Western world, or of course, that other part of the world is good, but we had everything. Honestly speaking, it's all about the spirit in which we implement. The enforcement is the challenge, and as Shivangi said rightly, it's also the responsibility, the due care, due diligence, what the management would like to really achieve and would like to put the efforts. I think it's not only about the policy. Yeah, no doubt, policy sets the direction, and no doubt with Digital India, with Prime Minister Modi's vision about Digital India, it's all great, and no doubt PDP. The act is definitely welcome, and as Shivangi said rightly, honestly, we're just scratching the surface on privacy. Privacy is just not yet. Many companies still are struggling to. So absolutely, it's important. While GDPR has been there for a while, a lot of large enterprises have, of course, work globally. Definitely, they comply with those certain privacy principles. But yeah, it is absolutely important, and I'm sure it's the right move, and I think we're all waiting for that bill to be passed and to become an act, and it's not only about that. Even many organizations who are responsible enough took all this very seriously and started working. So, in fact, in the right direction. And so, privacy, no doubt, it's a completely different beast altogether. It has to be literally thought at a very early stage. I'm a strong believer that it cannot be afterthought, like security. Like, we have been talking security by design. Like I can keep talking hours together about how security was never thought at the early stage. A typical standard before the application want to go live, oh, go and get a CISO approval. Come on, CISO is not Rajnikant. He cannot do magic. You have to go back to the drawing board at a very early stage, start embedding. I think same thing now applies to privacy. I'm sure Shivangi will agree. Privacy by design, right? Today, I think organizations are trying to learn how can they embed the privacy principles, and typically what are the principles. So it's not about whether PDP or GDPR. It's the fundamentals remain same, right? The fundamental privacy principles remain same. So organizations who are very serious, who are already started, in fact, looking at all these things, how they can do these changes in the. I think they're going back to the drawing board. How can they, as Shivangi said rightly, in fact, why do they need to collect so much of data? Like today, because like in Hindi we say, "Chalo, mil raha hai to le lo bhai, le lo," means try to collect as much as possible and let's keep it. But that's going to be a big risk. So tomorrow, probably, I think after the privacy bill becomes act, and so definitely every organization is going to be much more impacted, because why do they need to collect, and where do they store the data? And as Shivangi said rightly, it's not, you may not be aware that how this data, right? Maybe the data is compromised, and you finally become party to some other fraudster, right? Trying to leverage this, and so I think that's the challenge. What today every organization need to go back. So I think the way we've spoken about security by design, now privacy by design is going to be the next big thing, which organizations need to go back to the drawing board and ensure that they need to make all these changes. I know many companies still are waiting for that bill to become act, but I believe they should not wait, because there's nothing going to change. Right? So there's nothing going to change. I think some companies have started the work. Some are still, as Shwangi said, yeah, some are still waiting. Let's see when the act will happen. We will wake up. So that's the standard. But I think it's not about the policies. It's about the enforcement, about the implementation, and how we take it positively. Because it's a digital world now. We have to, and it's a global world, right? It's not only about today. Every company, right, is globally operating, and and privacy is definitely one of the important aspects in the basic design itself, which has to be thought through very seriously. Otherwise, it's definitely going to be catastrophic for companies with the penalties or the reputation. And absolutely, it's a data world, and you cannot just simply sit on the data which we are not supposed to collect or not supposed to use it. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Satish, for adding your thoughts. You're right. We always talk about the West, but we definitely have this IT Act bill, and few companies know it. And since it is not, put it, or it was not forced to the companies, so people were not taking it so seriously. And now I would like to go back to ask on this. On the cloud aspects, because now we definitely know the cloud businesses are soaring. Even the Gartner report says most of the organizations are moving towards cloud. And with this, the way how the cloud is soaring, and for sure we have to have some additional security measures. Because we all know this is a new normal. For sure, Yask is not working from home, but then rest all of us are working from home, and most of the employees are remotely connecting to all of these infrastructure. So, what additional measures we have to have in place in order to ensure the cloud security aspects?
Okay, so I think one important driving factor for security in cloud is going to originate from the requirement of privacy. Shivangi very rightly pointed out aspects of privacy and how we tend to neglect that part. I think everybody, or most of the cybersecurity professionals would be talking about the generic security controls when it comes to securing the data. I would employ all levels, defense in depth, and now we are moving probably towards the zero trust architecture, trying to protect my data. However, what aspect that we often tend to neglect is the privacy part, especially when a lot of organizations are moving towards the cloud. One important part, IT Act has been around for 20 years now. It is not something which is, a recent thing. PDP is going to come, just a matter of time. What is important is to realize that when we are dealing with this humongous amount of data, every employee, every person who is accessing this data is becoming, is in a way becoming a data fiduciary. My company, any company for that matter, which is dealing with this huge amount of data, is acting as a data fiduciary, and any kind of a loss of this data is something which should be concerning the organization. I mean, more than the data which is on the cloud, I'm not saying that I should not be bothered about something which is on the cloud. I'm saying that I should pay equal focus, or probably a little more, on the data which is residing, especially in these current COVID times when employees are working from home and are accessing the data from their personal devices. The kind of activities happening on the personal devices, companies have to be really particular and careful about that part as well. Both the panelists have talked about the penalties, which is a good catalyst for any organization to start thinking about privacy. Yes, that is going to certainly act as a good driving point, but I think we need to realize that as flexibility comes into the system, especially in the working, uh, we are opening so many ports for this data to go out. The exfiltration of the sensitive data, and one another important aspect is the definition of sensitive. I think Shivangi very rightly pointed about this location thing. Lot of There has been a lot of debate about what all parameters would be counted as sensitive. We are talking about data going onto the cloud. There is already some discussion about the data residency, not just in our country, across the globe also. All countries talk about that the data should not leave the geographical boundaries. And all of that is trust based. When I am going to the cloud, I think in a way it is kind of defeating the purpose, that when I say I have to go to the cloud, but I also need to impose so many restrictions. Although that's something that has to be done, but cloud in the sense as we talk about, is not the way. The cloud is not the cloud that we used to talk about 5-7 years back. It is a restricted, a private thing, maybe restricted to a country, to a location, and the parameters have to be exact. I need to be exactly sure about the values that I am taking from my customers, putting onto the cloud, the kind of risk that is there. So therefore, again, the cloud journey is not new. It has been there for a long period of time. What has changed over, or should be changing, if it has not fully, is the focus towards the privacy, towards the value of the data. And I think uh, just one last point on this. I mean, we certainly talk about these acts coming into place, so much of regulation coming into place. I think what is missing is the value of this, or the importance of this data being known to the end customer. I don't have to go and tell a person who holds a physical, gold, that there is a certain value associated to this asset, but that same person would not probably associate the same level of importance towards the locational data of that person. Therefore, if that awareness comes in the end user as well, they also on their part would be equally more concerned about that data going on, not just the organization. I mean, it's a two-way thing. The organizations have to do their part. There are a lot of penalty, but there has to be some part which has to be done from the end user as well. So I think when any organization moves towards the cloud, would now not just focus on the regulation part, would also be focusing on so many other aspects which have so far been, I would not say neglected, but not being, not the kind of importance has not been given that it should have been. Therefore, the cloud journey, these are some of the points that I think should be important when we talk about this journey towards the cloud.
Yeah, thank you. As you rightly pointed out, regarding the trust factor, which is really more important, as we can have n number of regulations and geographic locations and n number of controls in the end. Trust is the most important factor in the entire ecosystem. Thanks for that. And with this, I would also like to, pick Satish brain on this. we keep hearing so much about, India being the top 10 most targeted significant cyber attacks during the COVID time. And we as a country, I just want to, understand from you, how are we going to combat this? How are we going to address all of these risks? Because we all agree to the fact like cybersecurity is the backbone for the digitization. On the other end, we're also on the top most, targeted attacked countries, if we see that.
Yeah, so the fact is naturally because India being the knowledge, I should say, knowledge country for the whole rest of the world, we do so much of outsourcing. So naturally we are targeted, and they know that, of course. I'm sure you must have seen the recent attacks on this IT companies, right? Because that's where they can reach, and of course with so much of data out there, and yeah, so but having said that, while we are targeted, that's where the focus of cybersecurity also is now, in fact, gaining momentum. So companies understand, realize that yes, uh, uh, definitely India, the attacks are increasing. Equally, of course, they're being more aware. So a lot of companies are now taking this proactively, doing that risk-based approach, and answering back to yes point on the cloud. So of course, cloud adoption is also at its peak. In the sense, I'm sure we all know, right? India is a startup country now, right? There's so much of ideas. So much of great things happens in India, especially a city like Bangalore, where it's a startup city, and so a lot of things happens on cloud. But most of time, people don't understand the cloud model, especially. Shivangi will agree with me, right? The shared responsibility model. It's not that I go on cloud and everything cloud provider will take care, right? So end of the day, the cloud is just the infrastructure what they provide, and finally the responsibility still lies with the company who's actually putting the data. So whether, and we saw most of the compromises on the cloud is not on the cloud infrastructure, is on the weakest links of typically the customer is not taken care of, whether the data protection or the encryption. I'm sure we all know, right? Most of the cloud, I should say, S3 bucket leaks are more towards your key compromises, right? Because so I think those basic hygiene things need to be taken care, and I'm sure one side we are being constantly challenged by all this, but equally there has been a lot of work happening towards. So it's good, of course. India, no doubt, it's a vibrant place. A lot of good work is happening. So while we are targeted, but I think it's not a lost battle. I'm very positive. It's not a lost battle, right? We will fight the battle, and that's where we all are there. And as a community, of course, I normally use this word: the bad guys collaborate. We don't collaborate. So let's collaborate more, and let's all work together, and let's make our country safe, and provide the larger assurance. Like we have already done a great for the whole rest of the world, and I'm sure we'll come out strong even on the cybersecurity space. It's not a lost battle. We will win the battle, and there's so much of talent out there. And because I am also very close to mentoring and coaching, as you said, in fact, Isaac is just very close to my heart. It's more of volunteering there. So I think now there's so much of opportunity out there to learn, and so much of skill set out there, and we will definitely make it happen. While we are constantly targeted, we'll reply back with all the right kind of I should say, with what are the best we can do, and I'm sure we will win this battle.
Thank you, Satish, for living that spirit and also stirring it up for all of us. And there are a few questions that are coming from the audience. Maybe Shivangi, I would quickly throw something at you. This is regarding how are the investments being made in cybersecurity startups to support homegrown security solutions in India? Yeah, since you have the experience of starting something on your own and then getting it here, so I thought you would be the best one to answer us on this. Yeah.
I think now there are, initiatives like Startup India and all of that. But as an entrepreneur, honestly, I don't think that really impacts any of us. There is no incentive. I mean, I know I'm probably saying something which is not a very palatable thing. I mean, let me give you an example. There are, for example, one of the measures that are out there for startups, right? It says a 3-year income tax holiday, but you'd realize that you start paying income tax only when you're a profitable venture. When you're a startup, it takes a while, especially when you're building a product, to even get to profitability, and forget about paying tax on it. So how does it benefit me today, right? How easy is it for folks to get funding? It is not easy. Banks don't fund us. So what you only so if you want to build a business the traditional way, which is not go behind, you want to make it profitable, you want to invest, you want to bootstrap, you don't want to go behind VC money, there are no options. Whereas other countries do give options. Why do so many security startups look at, for example, Singapore? There's so much of incentive given. I'm sorry to say, but what is being done is there's a lot of publicity around it, but I don't think on the ground level there's too much of incentive.
Yeah. Thank you, Shivangi, for that. And we are also coming towards the end of this session. So I just wanted each of us to quickly, wind up, because now we also know the fact, like Modi ji is also heavily talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, and Satish rightly mentioned, we are still going to take it as from a challenging situation to a position of strength. Maybe each of us can quickly share 1 minute of our thought on this Atmanirbhar with respect to cybersecurity, how we, all of us as leaders, see India from here till today, with all the risks and all the challenges, and at the same time opportunities we have in front of us. Maybe yes, you want to start? Yeah.
I think what the Honorable Prime Minister has talked about, especially the Atmanirbhar thing in with respect to cyber security. I think this has been the norm right from the beginning, or should have been the norm. You have to be self-reliant when it comes to cyber security. But having said that, yes, I learn from my mistakes, and I also learn from my peers' mistakes. So therefore, though I need to be self reliant, I need to develop those processes, probably the tools, also the technologies, also, especially given the geopolitical scenario. But at the same time, I also need to coordinate when it comes to cybersecurity. I need to share the data, as was earlier also pointed out during this discussion itself, that there is now going to be a certain penalty for not disclosing the breaches. So I think Atmanirbhar along with coordination is, I think, the way forward when it comes to cybersecurity.
Thank you, Ask, for that. And Satish, would you like to go next?
Yeah, in fact, yes, I echo Shivangi comments or her sentiments, and but equally, yeah, I am with her. But yeah, but there's a lot of talent and a lot of innovation is happening. So it's no more that only the Western world has to innovate and build products. So India also, I can see a lot of startups doing a lot of good work, and I'm sure I think in the coming years we'll see, right, a lot of solutions coming out of India, especially with the young talent and young startups trying to do some innovation on various. There's so much of startups out there who are innovating, trying to build a lot of cybersecurity solutions, and we saw it for the last 2 3 years. We see many local homegrown cyber solutions, which also, in fact, are slowly now making their mark globally. Also, in fact, I can just say that a lot of companies who have built products, of course, they have gone global, and let's see. I hope we will see maybe the next RSA conference. We'll see a lot of Indian startups displaying their because typically always the RSA conference has been the what you call the main stage for all these cybersecurity startups to be showcasing. I hope we can see many more solutions coming out of India very soon.
Thanks, Satish, for that. And Shivangi, maybe yeah, you can also add your thoughts on that.
One quick one, not from the Atmanirbhar point of view, but from the general ecosystem. So while we have policies and laws in the pipeline, like the cybersecurity policy and this PDP bill, a lot of it is what I call the stick approach. But I think all corporates need a little bit of carrot also. So some incentives for implementing security measures would also go a long way. Maybe tax rebates, maybe some other form of incentivization to get all organizations to implement cybersecurity for the overall benefit. I mean, that's just a closing thought.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And all of us rightly mentioned. And I would like to thank each and every one of you once again, and especially to Shivangi. for making it up. And, it's really my pleasure to have all of you and to spend this 1 hour picking all your brains and also learning so much also for my own self. And all of you stay safe and stay healthy. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye bye. Love.
Thank you. Bye bye.